weeks and months passed as they puzzled over how he did it. And groups all over the United States, for like Martin Marietta and some of the other larger corporations, had scientists gathered together trying to figure out how did he do it. One guy was out fishing, one of the scientists, and he's throwing his line into the water. And as it hit, ripples went out, and there was this swirling vortex next to a rock. And he saw how the splashing water moved some twigs that came together, pulled in by the vortex and stuck together. He says, "I've got it. I understand gravity now." They went running back, and a month later, they rang the guys at the Pentagon and said, "We've done it. It's 30 feet in diameter, and it's about a foot thick, and it weighs 15 tons, and it only moves off the floor an inch, but we've got anti-gravity." Well, the Pentagon said, "Get your notes, get over here quick." Everybody is reassembled into the Pentagon in the same room. They show the film of the test to all the other guys who weren't there, and they say, "Wow, fantastic." The guy that called the meeting said, "Gentlemen, I want you to meet someone very special." Curtain opens, and out comes the red-headed scientist, the dead one. And they said, "What is this?" They said, "Well, he's an actor. He never existed as we told it to you. We had to remove the noise level from your mind to say that it is possible to get you to work on it." Now, I tell you this for a reason. Two streams of events have been following the UFO circumstance: the real alien or fallen one's chain, and the one where the noise level has been removed in certain scientists' minds to get them to develop this. We have developed anti-gravity. I was recruited way after they got it for the first time because I came up with a method of powering a saucer craft using an ionized air plasma, which I'll explain to you later. In that program, under Dr. Teller, I was sent down to Australia. And so I have been privy to things you would never see. You would never, ever see. And I'm going to show you some of those things as best I could recreate them today so that you'll understand that mankind has, on his own accord, done some of this. Now, before the alien card was played or begun in 1947, it was kicked around in Washington that in addition to removing the noise level, after World War II was over, there was going to have to be some sort of a plan devised to stop warfare. We could not afford, the human race could not afford another warfare with the technology at the stage it was. Any of you that have brothers and sisters, as children, you can remember when you were in your room fighting at night, probably, and your dad said, "Stop, or I'm coming in with the belt." That he meant business, yeah, probably, until you heard the knock at the door. And when the door ripped open and there was the 8-foot wide belt with meat cleavers on it and said, "I'm going to kill you," you knew you were friends again. You and your brother or sister were friends. And, "Hey, Dad, no problem." We are that way. Russian, Chinese, American, Canadian. We are the fighting siblings, all humans. Well, majority of us anyway. To get us together long enough to try peace, to get along in harmony, it was reasoned that they could not coerce us from any philosophical or political point. They could not force us with a dictatorship. So they were going to fool us into thinking we were being invaded without knowing that we had aliens at the time. The best laid plans go astray. In 1947, there was a crash. And there were alien beings on that crash. Even though I wasn't there, I'm convinced from what I was shown inside the organization. Certainly there were some technologies, and probably still are some remaining, that we were not able to back engineer, but some very interesting things did surface. Noise level, yeah, we don't want that. Okay. Now, to help you understand gravity, I'm doing this for a reason. There have been people that have talked about anti-gravity, some magic thing and this kind of stuff, and it's a very simple thing in concept. But I'm going to use graphics and some animations and some films of some of the tests we've done to explain gravity to you. So you understand then how anti-gravity can be made and was made, and will not be surprised when you see this upon you shortly out in the open. There is a real severe deception in the works, not entirely mankind's doing. Remember me telling you about noise level, guy out fishing and seeing the vortex and the little spin and stuff. What we see here is just a simple water drop. But I've put this up to show you how when the water drops, it splashes out, makes a large radius first ring, then smaller ones out like that. And then the reflection of its splash pops up a ball in the air like that. Okay, big deal, you've seen that. Now, what happens next is you will see if you take one splash, it sets equally, almost equally spaced crowns out like this. These are inertial things formed by water pressing on itself to make little beadlets out here like one single drop would do. This happens usually on a flat surface instead of a deep amount of water. Now, for the astronomers in the crowd, what we see here is a splash which can represent the sun. Then there's the first orbit of some planet, and a second and a third. But if you're an astronomer, you notice that those rings, the radii of them, do not match our planets. You think, well, this couldn't be explaining gravity and orbits of planets. But it does. Because in space, you don't have an infinite pond where the ripples just go out and don't come back. Space has mass and resistance. It's like a very fine fluid that's so fine that atoms are made up of a lot of it. It's called ether space in James Clerk Maxwell's day last, or century before last, and we have returned to that understanding of the way the world works. When you take a bucket of paint, thick paint, and you put your paint stirrer on your drill and you stick it down in and spin it around, it will make circular waves go out and hit the edge of the paint bucket and then come back to your spinning paint stirrer, the little rod. If you spin it at the right speed for that can, the wave will go out, reflect back in, just in time to be in phase with the next spin wave coming out from your spinning rod. This is called standing waves or harmonics. When that happens, then the spacing of the rings changes. And when it does, you can have a planet and a moon, like the Earth and the moon right there, following this particular orbit. Notice how there are bands of orbits. We have those in our own solar system, the Jovian lighter density planets like Jupiter and Saturn, where they have a large mass hump like this. That would be out in this area here. Here down in our zone is a different set of rings, but they all follow what's called a hyperbolic or an exponential curve as far as their distance from the sun like this. It's a very nice curve. But it's a sum of two things, two waves. The sun is spinning at high speed and it spins out a bunch of rings. They reflect from space itself because it's spinning so fast, the sun is. And the waves reflect back, and where they cross and add together forms an orbit. And a planet has to orbit in one of those or it breaks up. Like the asteroid belt used to be a planet, but now it's broken up and pieces of it are on the surface of Mars, a lot of red dust and a 600-mile diameter chunk of that, either a moon or the planet itself in that orbit, is broken up on the surface of Mars near the Cydonia area where people think there's a face, and that's a farce. Gravity can be determined with a telescope looking at distant star systems. How can you see gravity? Because scientists, astronomers have found that as a star spins, it's originally spherical, but as it spins, it starts to flatten at the poles. And this is called oblateness. It's not totally round, it's oblate flattening. When that happens, they measure the number of degrees of off-true circle, that is, and they say, its gravitational constant is such and such because it is so flattened. The more it flattens, the higher the gravitational constant. What they're telling you is this: gravity has to have spin around some center or you don't have gravity. So you say, well, why is that? It's because gravity is not a one-way force. It's the result of two forces acting. You spin out diverging waves, they reflect back converging, and where they cross partially or entirely, the directions either cancel entirely or are more in favor of this way or that way. In essence, gravity will reverse in orbits and not all be pointed at the sun. In between orbits, there are null zones. There are zones where the the forces net more that way out away from the solar system than toward the center. On the Earth, if you were to drill a hole all the way down to the center and drop a rock, it wouldn't go to the center of the Earth. It would go down a fixed distance and bounce back up, not to the surface, but probably 150, 200 miles below, and find its equilibrium point. There are layers or shells of inertia that form gravity. Spin. Have I lost everybody?